Rusted chains of prison moons are shattered by the sun. I walk a road, horizons change, the tournament's begun. The purple piper plays his tune, the choir softly sing lullabies in an ancient tongue for the court of the crimson.
Okay, I promised I was going to read a little bit more from the Vatican. I was focusing on secret societies for a time, but I haven't done enough on the Vatican as being an institution, being used as a vehicle to usher in a one-world collectivist government. And so I am continuing. I am hammering out all this documents and proof. So it can be, this channel, hopefully, at some point, might actually be considered a good source for anybody to, feel free to, stop by the channel and listen to me read this information. Or even, the links that I provide on the videos, go check them out yourself. And it's good. This is being used as a good vehicle for sharing all the information. That's not disinformation. It's not half-truth. It's completely irrefutable evidence that there is a conspiracy among secret forces, particularly secret societies and certain religions, headed by, of course, the Illuminati, of course. And, well, this is another one. This is from www.vatican.va, and this is called Towards Reforming the International Financial and Monetary Systems in the Context of Global Public Authority. This is a little bit on the old side. This came out like around the time Obama got elected, and this was around 2009. But again, this is just documenting the proof that it's not a conspiracy theory, that, the world government and what's actually being popularly called now the Great Reset is, is proof. So, this is it. So if you want to go check that out yourself, I will provide the link on my channel. So this will be a little bit of a read. Preface. The world situation requires the concerted effort of everyone, a thorough examination of every facet of the problem, social, economic, cultural, and spiritual. The Church, which has long experience in human affairs and has no desire to be involved in the political activities of any nation, seeks but one goal: to carry forward the work of Christ under the lead of the befriending Spirit. And Christ entered this world to give witness to the truth, to save, not to judge, to serve, not to be served. With these words and the prophetic and always relevant encyclical Popularium Progressio of 1967, Pope Paul VI outlined in a clear way the trajectories of the Church's close relation with the world. These trajectories of perspectives intersect with the perspectives of others outside the Church and the profound value of human dignity and the quest for the, here we go again, the quest for the common good. Previous article from the Vatican and the like the Dream of the Ages from the Freemasons I just did. Use that word a lot, common good. It's those words, I mean, a lot. Okay, so the quest for the common good, which make people responsible and free to act according to their highest aspirations. The economic and financial crisis which the world is going through summons everyone, as individuals and peoples, to examine in depth the principles and the cultural and moral values that underlie social coexistence. What is more, the crisis engages private actors and competent public authorities on the national, regional, and international level in serious reflection on causes and on solutions of a political, economic, and technical nature. In this perspective, Pope Benedict XVI teaches the crisis obliges us to replan our journey, to set ourselves new rules, and to discover new forms of commitment, to build on positive experiences and to reject negative ones. The crisis thus becomes an opportunity. Like that one douchebag, Rahm Emanuel, who was in the Obama era. He said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." Didn't he say that? I think. So you have another guy, the Pope, saying that this financial crisis that started in 2008. All of course, engineered by the banksters. Of course, it's an opportunity for discernment in which to shape a new vision for the future. Of course, that's New World Order. In this spirit, with confidence rather than resignation, it is appropriate to address the difficulties of the present time. The G20 leaders themselves said in the statement that they adopted in Pittsburgh in 2009, quote, "The economic crisis demonstrates the importance of ushering in a new era of sustainable global economic activity grounded in responsibility." So you have that sustainable global economic activity, sustainable development. That's part of that Agenda 21, of course. And the Agenda 21 is the plan, is the step-by-step plan of bringing in this one world collectivist government to this fake environmental front, or fronts. The Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace now responds to the Holy Father's appeal while making the concerns for everyone our own, especially the concerns of those who pay most dearly for the current situation. With due respect for the competent civil and political authorities, the Council hereby offers and shares its reflection towards reforming the international financial and monetary systems in the context of global public authority. We hope that world leaders and all people of goodwill find this reflection helpful. It is an exercise of responsibility not only towards the current, but above all towards the future generations, so that hope for a better future and confidence in human dignity and capacity for good may never be extinguished. Peter K.A. Cardinal Turkson, President. That was this part. So, presupposition. Every individual and every community shares in promoting and preserving the common good. There we go again. To be faithful to their ethical and religious vocation, communities of believers should take the lead in asking whether the human family has adequate means at its disposal to achieve the global common good. The Church, for her part, is called to encourage in everyone, without distinction, the desire to join in the monumental amount of individuals and collective effort which men and women have made through the course of the centuries to better the circumstances of their lives. This human activity accords with God's will, or the Illuminati's will. 1. Economic development and inequalities. The grave economic and financial crisis gripping the world today springs from multiple causes. Opinions on the number and significance of these causes vary widely. Some commentators focus above all on certain errors that they consider to be inherent in the economic and financial policies. Others stress the structural weaknesses of political, economic, and financial institutions. Still, others say that the causes are ethical breakdowns occurring at all levels of a world economy that is increasingly dominated by utilitarianism and materialism. At every stage of the crisis, one might discover particular technical errors intertwined with certain ethical orientations. In material goods, markets, natural factors, and productive capacity, as well as labor, in all of its many forms, set quantitative limits by determining relationships of costs and prices which, under certain conditions, permit an efficient allocation of available resources. In monetary and financial markets, however, the dynamics are quite different. In recent decades, it was the banks that extended credit, which generated money, which in turn sought a further expansion of credit. In this way, the economic system was driven towards an inflationary spiral. that inevitably encountered a limit in the risk that credit institutions could accept. They faced the ultimate danger of bankruptcy with negative consequences for the entire economic and financial system. After World War II, national economies made progress, albeit with enormous sacrifices for millions, indeed billions of people who, as producers and entrepreneurs on the one hand, and as saviors and consumers on the other, had put their confidence in a steady and progressive expansion of money supply and investment in line with opportunities for real growth of the economy. Since the 1990s, we have seen that money and credit instruments worldwide have grown more rapidly than the accumulation of wealth in the economy, even adjusting for inflation. From this came the formation of pockets of excessive liquidity and speculative bubbles, which later turned into a series of solvency and confidence crises that have spread and followed one another over the years. Again, all engineered by the very same people bringing this agenda about. Our first crisis in the 1970s to the early 1980s was related to the sudden sharp rises in oil prices. A series of crises in the developing world followed. For example, the first crisis in Mexico in the 1980s and those in Brazil, Russia, and Korea, and then again in Mexico in the 1990s, as well as in Thailand and Argentina. The speculative bubble in real estate and the recent financial crisis had the very same origin in the excessive amount of money and the plethora of financial instruments globally. Whereas the crisis in developing countries that risk engulfing the global monetary and financial system were contained through interventions by the more developed countries, the outbreak of the crisis in 2008 was characterized by a different factor compared with the previous ones, something decisive and explosive. Generated in the context of the United States, it took place in one of the most important zones for the global economy and finances. It directly affected what is still the currency of reference for the great majority of international trade transactions. A liberalist approach, unsympathetic towards public intervention in markets, chose to allow an important international financial institution to fall into bankruptcy, on the assumption that this would contain the crisis and its effects. Unfortunately, this spawned a widespread lack of confidence and a sudden change in attitudes. Various public interventions of enormous scope, more than 20% of GN gross national product, were urgently requested in order to ward off the negative effects that could have overwhelmed the entire international financial system. The consequences for the real economy, what with grave difficulties in some sectors, in the first place construction and widespread communication of pessimistic economic forecasts, have generated a negative trend in production and international trade. This has led to very serious repercussions for employment as well as other effects that have probably not yet seen their full impact. The costs are extremely onerous for millions in the developed countries, but also and above all for billions in the developing ones. In countries and areas where the most elementary goods such as health, food, and shelter are still lacking, more than 1 billion people are forced to survive on an average income of less than $1 a day. Global economic well-being, traditionally measured by national income and also by levels of capabilities, grew during the second half of the 20th century to an extent and with a speed never experienced in the history of humankind. But the inequalities within and between various countries have also grown significantly, while some of the more industrialized and developed countries and economic zones, the ones that are most industrialized and developed, have seen their income grow considerably. Other countries have in fact been excluded from the overall improvement of the economy, and their situation has even worsened. After the Second Vatican Council and his encyclical Letter Populorum Progressio of 1967, Pope Paul VI already clearly and prophetically denounced the dangers of a liberalist conception of economic development because of its harmful consequences for world equilibrium and peace. The pontiff asserted that the defense of life and the promotion of people's cultural and moral development are the essential conditions for the promotion of authentic development. On these grounds, Paul VI said that full and global development is the new name of peace. 40 years later, in its annual report of 2007, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, recognized the close connection between an inadequately managed process of globalization on the one hand and the world's great inequalities on the other. Today, the modern means of communication make these great economic, social, and cultural inequalities obvious to everyone, rich and poor alike, giving rise to tensions and to massive migratory movements. Nonetheless, it should be reiterated that the process of globalization with its positive aspects is at the root of the great development of the world economy in the 20th century. It is worth recalling that between 1990 and 2000, the world population increased almost fourfold, while the growth in wealth produced worldwide was much greater, resulting in a significant rise of average per capita income. At the same time, however, the distribution of wealth did not become fairer, but in many cases worsened. What has driven the world in such a problematic direction for its economy and also for peace? Well, we know the answer to that. These very people that have infiltrated places like the Vatican and the financial industry and the governments. First and foremost, an economic liberalism that spurns rules and controls. Economic liberalism is a theoretical system of thought, a form of economic a priorism. It purports to derive the laws for how markets function from theory, these being laws of capitalistic development, but it exaggerates certain aspects of markets and downplays or ignores others. An economic system of thought that sets down a priori the laws of market functioning and economic development without measuring them against reality risk becoming a tool subordinated to the interests of the countries that effectively enjoy a position of economic and financial advantage. So it's really capitalist economies that he's saying is the problem. See, first they, used the banking industry and used capitalism to really bankrupt the world and society. And then they come out on the other side and they to gain more control over our lives and to make us more poor. They promise us this utopia, this solution from the problems that they created. Point the finger at the problems that they create, and then really just kind of create even more problems for us by posing as saviors, when really it's just more scams. Regulations and controls, imperfect though they may be, already often exist at the national or regional levels, whereas on the international level, it is hard to apply and consolidate such controls and rules. The inequalities and distortions of capitalist development are often an expression not only of economic liberalism, but also of utilitarian thinking, that is, theoretical and practical approaches according to which what is useful for the individual leads to the good of the community. This saying has a core of truth, but it cannot be ignored that individual utility, even where it is legitimate, does not always favor the common good. Here we go again. The argument that the common good needs to overrule the individual. And financial economies that favor the common good need to be the prevalent one over the financial economies that promote the individual. Puts more emphasis on the individual. So that's the same collectivist argument. In many cases, a spirit of solidarity is called for that transcends personal utility for the good of the community. In the 1920s, some economists had already warned about giving too much weight in the absence of regulations and controls to theories which have since become prevailing ideologies and practices on the international level. One devastating effect of these ideologies, especially in the last decade of the past century and the first years of the current one, has been the outbreak of the crisis in which the world is still immersed. In his social encyclical, Pope Benedict XVI precisely identified the roots of a crisis that is not only economic and financial, but above all moral in nature. In fact, as the pontiff notes, to function correctly, the economy needs ethics, and not just of any kind, but one that is people-centered. People-centered, the sneaky language, the sneaky con language of, promising it's going to be people-centered. No, it's really the state-centered. It's the state promising to take care of us, when in reality it's the state controlling us. He goes on to denounce the role played by utilitarianism and individualism and the responsibilities of those who have adopted and promoted them as the parameters for the optimal behavior of all economic and political agents who operate and interact in the social context. In addition, Benedict XVI also identifies and denounces a new ideology, that of technocracy. Benedict XVI, I think he was that guy, if I'm not mistaken. He was that last pope before Pope Francis. And if you really look at some pictures of this guy, he really does look like a creature from like hell. He really does look like some kind of. He looks like that, like Emperor Palpatine, Star Wars. He just looks pure evil, and really just looks like really a demon. I mean, I don't know. There's the theory that some of these elitists that are bringing about this new world order and the high echelons of the Illuminati are really not human. They're really just demons or aliens or whatever. Looking at some of the pictures of this Pope, I think he's talking about, Pope Benedict XVI. Let me look him up real quick. I'm going to be probably making a few videos reading from this anyway, so I can waste some time. I already finished the first part of it anyways. Oh yeah, I was looking this up, and this was very interesting. See the Queen of England, see the nurse there? Well, I'm gonna zoom in. Look at her belt buckle. Oh yeah, square and compass, pentagram. Yeah, you tell me that these fuckers aren't running the show. Orchestrating and working behind the scenes and deceiving us. Oh yeah. But anyways, you look up Pope Benedict XVI. It's almost like, yep, there you go, this guy. I mean, just look at that guy. Man. Ugh. Wow. Oh my god, dude. Look at that guy. Ugh. I mean, that guy looks fucking scarier than Freddy Krueger. I mean, probably shouldn't swear too much, otherwise YouTube might. Yeah, so that's who they're talking about. Right here, and yeah, he just looks, yeah, pure evil. Anyways, so that's who he's talking about here. So we're gonna take advice from a guy who looks like Emperor Palpatine, or someone who actually makes Emperor Palpatine look nice. Yeah, it's just there's like a picture of him, like I don't know, holding somebody's child, and he just looks like has that vampiric, psychic vampiric look or something, like he's just wanting to suck the energy out of this child or something. He's just like, Of course, I can never just start judging people on first appearances, but we know that organization, the Vatican, is just, how it's loaded with pedophiles, loaded with corruption. So I think that I'm in the right of, judging a book on its cover with whoever the hell is running, the Vatican. So, yeah, so I don't think I'm being out of line when I say those things about him. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is 2. The role of technology and the ethical challenge. The great economic and social developments of the past century, with their bright spots and serious shadows, can also be attributed in large part to the continued development of technology, and more recently to advances in information technologies, especially to their applications in the economy and most significantly in finance. However, if we are to think clearly about the current new social question, we must avoid the error, itself a product of neoliberal thinking, of regarding all the problems that need tackling as exclusively technical in nature. In such a guise, the problems evade the discernment and ethical evaluation that are urgently required. Don't you love how they're using that word ethical, right? Like the Vatican could ever be ethical. Never be. That is, of making technology absolute, which tends to prevent people from recognizing anything that cannot be explained in terms of matter alone. It also minimizes the value of the choices made by the concrete human individual who works in the economic financial system by reducing them to mere technical variables. Being closed to a beyond in the sense of something more than technology not only makes it impossible to find adequate solutions to the problems, but it impoverishes the principal victims of the crisis more and more from the material standpoint. Given the complexity of the phenomena of concern, the importance of ethical and cultural factors cannot be overlooked or underestimated. In fact, the crisis has exposed behaviors such as selfishness, collective greed, and the hoarding of goods on a mammoth scale. Again, these people that are doing all that are also the very same ones working on the other side, pointing the finger at themselves, as they always do, claiming that they're going to change this, somehow be the saviors and the solution, when in fact that what they're really attacking, well, who they're really shackling financially, is their main target, basically, the upper middle class, not the super rich. They'll always promise to do something about them, but that never really gets done anyways, because many of the super rich, of course, are a part of these brotherhoods bringing about this new world order, and so it's all a part of the order out of chaos scheme. You create the catastrophe, you come in, promise to bring about a solution, which is a solution they had in mind the whole time, from the very beginning, which is a new world order to protect us from all this stuff, when in fact it'll just be absolute and total tyranny, total control over every facet of our lives, under this promise that we're going to be safe, that we're going to be protected, just like this current V word. I'll just say the V word. They're promising us security, but as the news is coming out, it's not that. It's about control. So, no one can be content with seeing man live like a wolf to his fellow man, according to the concept discussed by Hobbes. No one can, in good conscience, accept the development of some countries to the detriment of others. If no solutions are found to the various forms of injustice, the negative effects that follow on the social, political, and economic level are destined to create a climate of growing hostility and even violence, and ultimately undermine the very foundations of democratic institutions, even the ones considered most solid. Recognizing the primacy of being over having and of ethics over the economy, the world's peoples ought to adopt an ethic of solidarity to fuel their action. Solidarity, it's a word to keep in mind here. This implies abandoning all forms of petty selfishness. Again, what they're hinting at with the selfishness, it's the capitalist selfishness, individualism, economically anyways, and embracing the logic of the global common good, which transcends merely passing and limited interest. In a word, they ought to have a keen sense of belonging to the human family, which means sharing in the common dignity of all human beings. Losing your ability to individually keep what you worked for. Even prior to the logic of a fair exchange of goods and the forms of justice appropriate to it, there exists something which is due to man because he is man, and by reason of his lofty dignity. In 1991, after the failure of Marxist communism, Blessed John Paul II had already warned of the risk of an idolatry of the market, an idolatry which ignores the existence of goods, which by their nature are not and cannot be mere commodities. Today his warning needs to be heeded without delay, and a road must be taken that he is in greater harmony with the dignity and transcends vocation of the person and the human family. Okay, so I'm going to end it right here, but yeah, so again, you're having them put it, this is, again, just like with the Mason stuff, this is just basically meant to deceive people who are good and well-meaning. There's many people who are Democrats, who are socialists, who aren't at the head of this conspiracy, who really do believe that this is the solution that'll work for us, that, they really do care, but they're just deceived, right? They're just blinded. They don't understand that they are a part of a nefarious plan. A group of men who know how to play chess with the world. So, okay, I'm going to end this here and make a part 2.